Chicken versus human systems. First, I want to talk about some facts about chickens. So chickens have better color vision than humans. When chickens bathe, they bathe by covering themselves in dirt. Chickens live in groups of flocks. Their eggshell color can be determined by the hen's earlobe. And their binomial name is Gallus gallus domesticus. Chickens are descendants from Southeast Asia, so you can find them there. And they're also found on farms. Now, I'm going to compare the digestive system of a chicken to the digestive system of a human. First, I'm going to speak about a human's digestive system. So first, food enters the mouth and then goes into the esophagus, which is called, when it enters the mouth, or when it enters the esophagus, it is then called a bolus. Then the bolus moves down the esophagus into the stomach and into the small intestine, then into the large intestine, through the large intestine, into the rectum, and then eventually out the anus. So now I'm going to compare and talk about the chicken's digestive system. So first, the chicken has a crop located to the right of the bird's breastbone, and it's right at the end of the esophagus. When eating lots of food, the crop enlarges to hold the food while it waits to be digested. When it empties, it contracts into a small pouch that isn't noticeable until full again. Then, the bolus enters the proventricular, which is the first part of the chicken's stomach. Chemical digestion of proteins start here. It produces hydrochloric acid and pepsin. It has a thick wall to contain acids. Then, it moves to the second part of the stomach, which is called the muscular gizzard. It contains grit and small stones that help break up food. Its inner surface is lined with keratin and forms solid skin. It is used as a replacement for chewing. Then it goes to the liver. The liver synthesizes fat and proteins to be used anywhere in a chicken's body. It also creates bile, which is stored in the gallbladder. Storage and production of vitamins is utilized in the liver for blood clotting. Chickens have a bile secretion system that allows them to digest food continuously. Then the food moves along to the small intestine. It starts from the gizzard and is about 55 inches long. The small intestine absorbs proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Next is the large intestine, which further digests water in the bowels, and it also contracts and pushes the bolus to the rectum. At the start of the large intestine is the ceca. It has a pouch which are around 7 inches, and when food enters from the small intestine, it's stored in the ceca to absorb the water and to break down the fibers. Then, the ceca empties itself a couple times a day. This is called cecal droppings. They often smell really bad, and they often lead to owners thinking their chickens are sick, but this is very normal. The large intestine then ends in the cloaca and the vent. It is the final point until they defecate. So the differences between the chickens and humans is that humans don't have a crop, and chickens have 2 parts of a stomach, and humans only have 1 part of a stomach. And food doesn't get affected by our liver, as in chickens they do. And as well, we don't have a ceca. When it goes into the large intestine, it makes its way through, then to our rectum, and then out. Now, I'm going to compare the chicken respiratory system to the human respiratory system. So first, the human respiratory system, this is the pathway of air. So air enters through the nose or the mouth. Then it goes to the pharynx, to the larynx, and then into the trachea, to the bronchi, to the bronchioles, and then to the alveoli. Now, I want to talk about a few functions of the respiratory system of a chicken. So the chicken's respiratory system has multiple functions. It is responsible for the absorption of oxygen and the release of carbon dioxide. The respiratory system is also responsible for the temperature regulation and releasing of heat. Chickens are packed with feathers all over their body, and they rely on the respiratory system for a stable body temperature. When it's hot, chickens breathe faster to get rid of that heat. Sometimes this can turn into panting and heavy breathing to cool down. Chicken lungs. The chicken has 2 lungs just like humans. 1/3 of their lungs sit between their ribs. This means they don't have the same round form as our lungs. This also means that their lungs don't expand the same way ours do because their ribs block it. The air makes its way down the body through the windpipe. The air splits into the left and right bronchi that lead to both lungs. They split into smaller secondary and tertiary bronchi. Then they travel to the air sacs. Air sacs are connected to the lungs via the bronchi. Some of them also connect to hollow pneumatic bones. Those type of bones lighten the chicken to be able to fly. The purpose of the air sacs are to circulate oxygen throughout the body. An adult chicken has 8 air sacs. They are like small filled balloons. 9 air sacs develop in chickens. The single clavicular air sac, a pair of cervical air sacs, a pair of craniothoracic air sacs, a pair of caudal thoracic air sacs, and a pair of abdominal air sacs. The air sacs also lighten the chicken by increasing the volume without increasing its body weight. It fills bones with air cells and it helps balance parts of the chicken, and it can also strengthen the voice of the chicken. 4 steps of a chicken's respiration. So, step 1. Chickens take its first breath. Then air passes through the windpipe to the posterior air sacs, then the abdominal air sacs, and then the caudal thoracic air sacs. These air sacs are full of air that are still high in oxygen. Chickens then exhale its first breath and push the air from the posterior air sac into the lungs. In the lungs, O2 is extracted in exchange with CO2. Step 3. The second time the chicken inhales, the air then moves out of the lungs into the interior air sacs. These air sacs contain air that are low in oxygen. The second exhale, the air from the interior air sacs is pushed back into the atmosphere through the windpipe. Those are the 4 steps of chicken's respiration, and they need to inhale and exhale twice for the air to pass through the cycle completely. Now we'll talk about the differences. Humans don't have air sacs, and chickens do have air sacs. Chickens' lungs are a different shape and they're blocked by the ribs. Our lungs are not round and they're not between the ribs. So those are the main differences between a human's respiratory system and a chicken's respiratory system. Now, finally, I'm going to compare the circulatory system of a chicken to the circulatory system of a human. So a human circulatory system transports oxygen to cells in the body. It transports blood throughout the body, transports nutrients. It has hormones, immune cells, and chemical compounds. Blood flow in a chicken's body. So their arteries carry the bright red blood away from the heart to the capillaries, and then veins carry all blood back to the heart. Now about their heart. It's a closed system. It's a 4-chambered heart, just like a human heart, and it's very similar to a human heart. Blood flow in a chicken's heart. After the exchange of the capillaries, the darkened blood with less oxygen goes to the right atrium. Then it flows to the right ventricle, then to the left atrium, then to the left ventricle, and then to the aorta that sends blood to the rest of the body. Start of the largest artery, the aorta, and ends in the smallest arteries and the arterioles. They then connect to the capillaries. Here, capillaries, only 1 cell in diameter, interact with tissues that exchange gases and nutrients. The other end of the capillary is a network of veins that go back to the heart. The similarities and differences to humans and chickens' circulatory systems. So similar, their 4-chambered heart is the same as a human, and they have all the same parts of the human heart. The only difference is the size of their heart compared to our heart. How all the systems work together. The digestive system brings nutrients into the body, and the circulatory system takes those nutrients into the blood and brings them throughout the body. The nutrients provide energy for the chicken and keeps it alive. The respiratory system brings oxygen into the body, then the circulatory system takes the oxygen and circulates it through the blood. Now for my mutation. The mutation I chose is to make the chicken be able to fly, not just glide. For them to be able to fly, they would need to have more hollow pneumatic bones. The air that they breathe in would need to be sent to their hollow pneumatic bones at a higher rate than normal. With them having this type of bone, they would become lighter, allowing them to fly because it's easier and less effort. If they do this, it would affect their breathing because they are using more air to fly. It goes to their bones, and it would take away from the amount of oxygen that they have in their air sacs and in their lungs. This would cause them to have less energy when they do physical activity, but they would still be able to fly.